Hello, guys. Welcome back to Ides Tarot. I hope that everyone is doing well in this retrograde season. Welcome to Eclipse season. We are going to be talking all about the lunar eclipse in Virgo that is happening on the 14th of March, one day before the technical Ides of March begins. The Ides of March actually is going to be the day after this eclipse on the 15th, where actually the ruler of this eclipse, Mercury, will be turning retrograde on the 15th of March. And so, quite an action-packed month in general. March is very active, as some of you might already be feeling, but March is definitely a very active month. Of course, we have the retrograde between Venus as well as Mercury happening. We got the eclipses, and we just got out of a Mars retrograde at the end of February. So hopefully everybody is hanging in there. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get into this lunar eclipse breakdown. Let me know in the comments, you guys, if you guys find these videos helpful. I want to make sure that all the content that I'm putting out is indeed helpful. And so if that means that some of these videos, like either need to be shorter or that, we do things in a little bit of a different way, in a different format, like, maybe not doing forecasts or anything like that, I would definitely rather take some things out and add things in that you guys find a bit more helpful, or possibly in a different way, and do that instead of doing whatever. And so let me know down in the comments. Other than that, like this video, share it with somebody that you think also would find it helpful, or just another astrology lover. Last thing is in Aries season, Aries season, March. The end of March, Aries season, I will be opening my books back up for all of you to be able to book with me your private session. So if you have been interested in that, and if you've been patiently waiting since last year to get in on a private reading with me, that time is coming soon, as well as opening up enrollment, I guess, for Astrology 101 and Tarot 101, learning those two divination forms. I will be teaching those both in a live form, like live virtual classes, but also I'll be teaching it through recording. So you can buy the actual recorded class as well from me. And so that is coming soon. And so I will let you know more about that the closer that we get to Aries season. But until then, let's go ahead and get into this lunar eclipse in Virgo. So when we're talking about Virgo, we're talking about themes of organization, routines, kind of like mundane, day-to-day, like kind of errands, health and wellness, especially like anything a bit more holistic or like grounded in the earth. So then we're also talking about healthcare in the healthcare system, any kind of like anything that's a bit more medicinal, whether it be holistic or not. We can talk about like the healthcare industry in general. Especially since Pisces the sun is in Pisces, and so it's about things that are invisible that affect us, things like such as poisons as well as medicines, things that can make us sick as well as heal us. Virgo is, I think, one of the biggest signs that I think points to healing, other than Sagittarius, in my personal opinion. And so we can really look at this as this lunar eclipse as a time where we can see what is making us sick and what has the ability and possibilities to heal us as well. And it's usually like the small things, the small changes. Virgo is about the small details. It is ruled by Mercury, which is the small details versus the big picture. And so when we look at this lunar eclipse in Virgo, it's like, what are the small changes that can make a huge difference? Whenever I also think of Virgo, I also think about like fact checking, asking what is actually true, what actually has proof behind it, what is tangible, what can we actually rely on that we know is absolutely factual, what is actual and factual. And having the discernment to kind of like sort through the fog that Pisces energy can really bring, since the sun is in Pisces at a what is it, at a 22. We are looking at all of that kind of energy just really coming together. Or sorry, not 22, with 23. I was like, did I? I was like, I drew through the 22. Saturn is at a 22, and then Pisces is, Sun in Pisces is at a 23. And so when we're looking at those two numbers, we're looking at the possibilities of the future, because we have Aquarius and Capricorn energy coming together through the actual degrees. And so Saturn in Pisces is conjunct the sun in Pisces. And so there's a lot of room for feeling a bit more serious, a bit more somber. And fact checking is definitely something that is really being brought in as well. What is true? Because Pisces can be such a big picture thinker. And Neptunian energy doesn't really care about what's real. It's kind of beyond that. It doesn't have boundaries. Which is another theme I think with this lunar eclipse, is like asking, where are your boundaries? What are, like, when have you taken things too far, or when have people taken things too far? When do you need to stand up for yourself and say, this is enough? This isn't going to work anymore. Those kinds of things. And so again, discernment is going to be another thing that Virgo really brings in. Other than like the anal perfectionism that Virgo so often gets talked about, Virgo is also an energy that I think about a lot when we're talking about service workers, or like service oriented roles. Again, like people that might be in like what we might think of as like small quotes, air quotes, small roles, but they are pivotal to making the world go round. It's really what I think about when I think of Virgo. And so yeah, it's like those small details that, if they are ignored, can make big problems or make huge monumental changes. Um, and so, since we do have this lunar eclipse in Virgo, it's important for us to also look at the ruler of this eclipse in Virgo, which is going to be Mercury, which I mentioned a day after this eclipse. We are going to be seeing Mercury move into its retrograde period. And so, one thing I want to say before, as a little spoiler, with all these retrogrades going on, because Mercury and Venus are both going to be retrograde in Aries, one thing I want to tell you right away is that I want you guys to take care of yourself. We were talking about healthcare, but I think also self-care can also be a really big theme of this lunar eclipse, because I think a lot of things will be said that aren't necessarily true, or that are just very impulsively talked about, Mercury and Aries, that are like very impulsively announced, having to do with health in the healthcare industry, or having to do with jobs, since Virgo is an earth sign, having to do with like stock markets and finances and things like that, or like food sources. All of those things, I think there will be some really shocking announcements that do end up coming out. And since we're in all of this like change that's happening with these retrogrades, there is a lot of room for that Virgo tendency to become very nervous and mental health to really be affected. When we're talking about that, I want you guys to remember that, again, Mercury is going to be turning retrograde the day after this eclipse. Take things with a grain of salt, okay, until everything is direct, because there's a lot of room for things to be walked back. So whatever you hear during this time, during this eclipse, no matter how shocking, before you freak out, I want you to research first. Remember, Virgo is proof. What can you prove? Research things. Do not believe everything you hear. You will drive yourself crazy during this time. Research what you are hearing, and make sure that you are actually like having that discernment on top of the actual proof as well. Going with your intuition is great, but make sure that you're also looking for the actual like truth of the matter, checking unbiased sources, especially if you're hearing things like, through the media or like non-independent media. Because remember, we still have Aquarius energy coming through the sun in Pisces, which is at a 23. And so it's like really looking at like what is a bit more independent versus like the more mob mentality. But it's also coming together to create foundation, or helping each other, in more like in a more service oriented way, in our community. When I think of Virgo, I think of like again like the small things, like I hate to sound like super cliche, but like loaning your neighbor a cup of sugar, or like, trading food sources. It's very Virgo. A very Virgo thing to do. Is like, yeah, trading like little essentials that you need on a day to day with neighbors, or people that you work with. So getting back to the ruler of this eclipse, Mercury is in Aries. And so Mercury in Aries can be like just a very impulsive speaker. It can definitely announce things. It can be very loud as well, very over the top if it needs to be, but it's usually just very loud and very impulsive, and it likes to announce things. And so we can see impulsive decisions as well as like impulsive announcements as well, um, and just kind of like rushed information that comes out, and things that will need revision later again, because we have Mercury turning retrograde, and so there's a lot of room for stuff to be walked back. Whenever I think of Mercury and Aries too, anytime I think of Aries in general, I think of like military, because it's ruled by Mars. Mars is actually still in Cancer right now, where Mars is not happy. And Mars in Cancer makes me think of defense of a country or defense of home. And so I think of, when we think of like Mercury and Aries being connected to Mars and Cancer, I think of like military mobilization, or some sort of announcement that has to do with, oh, we're like mobilizing our military to defend the country or to defend our home. If we're talking about like a more like personal kind of stage, then you can be, contemplating how to better defend your home, or how to better defend your family, um, how to better defend children also. And just kind of, I think on a world view, it can be like also, like military mobilization, as well as like, job markets and economic shifts that are also very impulsive or just very unpredictable. Um, Debates over like foreign policies, or like international relations. I could also see that like just getting a little bit heated. I could see that too with Mercury and Aries. Again, like loud conversations, and just like there being an air of tension and conflict, surrounding those things, possibly because things have been, said without a lot of thought, and, people having to backtrack on some of the things that they said later, because they said it with such chutzpah, or such like, mm, like this is going to happen. I could like, I'm just getting like the biggest a visual of like leaders or just people in your everyday life being like, this is what's going to happen, and then later they're like, oh, I mean, how I said that. I mean, like we're not going to do that exactly. That's exactly how I think that we can really imagine, or not imagine, how we'll start to see, things play out because of this eclipse. Especially when we're talking about financial stability, in women, because again, Mercury will conjunct Venus retrograde, um, and so we bring in like all of these themes, and women are involved as well, because Venus can be women. But we're also bringing in a lot of Mars energy, which can be like essentially all that I was talking about with Mercury in Aries. Um, so what else can we kind of expect? I think when we're looking at, um, sorry, my dog is like snoring, so if you hear him in the background, I apologize, by the way. I'm holding my microphone thanks to him because he chewed his face off while I was gone. Uh, but it is a Venus retrograde and it is eclipse season, a lunar eclipse at that. So while I hate to make this kind of like prediction, I do think it's important to talk about. Lunar eclipses are all about something coming to its crescendo, coming to its completion, coming to an end, letting things go. Virgo is very much all about like cutting off the things that are not needed so that you can become healthy. It is shifting schedules. So if you also feel like your schedule is just absolute chaos right now, it probably is, and it's probably a great opportunity for you to start clearing out the things and making room for only the essentials. Um, but I say that also because Venus is retrograde in Aries, and whenever we see Venus retrograde, we see Venus things being a bit more inhibited, such as jobs or being able to get a hold of income. And so I think, unfortunately, we will see a lot of job layoffs. Like I said, Virgo is an earth sign, so we are talking about jobs or income or being able to save for the future. Virgo is very much like preparation oriented. It's kind of like that preparation, like I always think of with Virgo, I think of like the story with the ant and the grasshopper. Virgo is the ant and it wants to prepare for the winter. And so there can be like, these very sudden shifts in economic downturns that cause a lot of people to lose their jobs, or just kind of major restructuring with like certain companies as well. Especially if it's like in the healthcare industry in particular. Um, Education, I think, can be another one. Virgo is another sign that I think of other than Sagittarius that has a lot to do with education too, and just kind of learning new things. So we talked about like, financial turbulence overall and also like losing jobs and economic issues. Um, but I do also wonder if like the stock market will have another crash. Like if you're in the US right now and you see what's going on, like I don't know how much we can take, how much more we can take. Like and so it makes me wonder what is coming because something is definitely coming during this during this lunar eclipse in Virgo. More stuff is coming because lunar eclipses are full moons essentially on steroids. And so a lot of financial turbulence, especially since Venus is also still retrograde during this time. And so it can be changes that affect wages and cost of living, as well as like any sort of like banking policies too. I could see that happening. But again, I think there is a lot of room for certain things, even if they're announced, for them to be revised or completely walked back completely. So I wouldn't get yourself all in a hizzy just yet until everything is starting to settle when Venus goes direct. I do believe on April 12th, and Mercury is also direct, I think, on April 1st. I have to double check those dates. But with health and healthcare, I think like we could possibly see because Venus retrograde is also Venus can also be health as well as Virgo is also health. So like some sort of like public health advisory could be announced, or that again, since Venus is retrograde, it can be revised or walked back later. Some sort of like medical breakthrough or scandal, or like some sort of change to some sort of pharmaceutical regulation can also come from Venus and Mercury retrograde in Aries being together during this eclipse. Um, and finally, I want to talk about some of the, like, I think I mentioned this earlier, like, what is the truth versus, like, misinformation? Actually, I'm a liar. I'm going to, like, just say this little thing first. When we're talking about Virgo, a lot of the times can be about these little things that we take for granted, whether it be in a situation or with people. The little details matter, guys. It matters so much during this eclipse. Um, people might feel very unappreciated, and I think people are a bit more prone to cutting off certain relationships where they don't feel valued um, during this time because it feels unhealthy to hold on to those things or to hold on to that job where you feel like your worth is not being um, accurately valued or appropriately valued. All of those things I think can definitely come up, as well as kind of like people feeling like that leaders aren't taking the right amount of accountability, or like they feel like they're just downright being lied to, Sun and Pisces. Like that could very much be a thing. Um, we can see like with misinformation and like kind of like legal disputes that can come from that Mercury retrograde side of the as the ruler of this eclipse, and just kind of hidden truth coming out, because a lot of times during a Mercury retrograde in Aries, or Mercury retrograde in general, truth can come out that was hidden before. Excuse me. Um, on a more personal level, I think that this could definitely, yes, on one end, bring a lot of career layoffs. But I also think because with the full moon, it's an ending is only happening because some sort of new cycle is beginning. So while this is going to be a really emotional time for a lot of people, possibly because certain tangible things or security is being taken away, something new is also being given as well. And I think a lot of it is spawning out of people feeling unsatisfied with their compensation or being unsatisfied with how they feel like they're being valued or not valued. Um, or unsatisfied with like work routines or environment, the toxicity in certain work environments as well, and just kind of reevaluating job roles and therefore switching careers or career paths or whatever. Um, we could see some leaders either in like jobs or like on the world stage kind of stepping down, or moving on to a new path as well, because finding new paths in career is not just for the people that work for other people, it's also for leaders as well. This is a bit more universal of an experience. um, Venus retrograde is such a huge part. Again, I will say it. I'll sound like a broken record because Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde are coming together during this time. They're conjunct, and so we can see X's come back up. Send that what you doing text. I'm telling y'all right now, we are leaving our exes in 2024. We're not doing that in 2025. I don't want to hear it when you guys book with me that you guys are back with your toxic ex. I don't want to hear it because they will be toxic. It's Venus and a Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde in Aries. I don't want to hear it. Like I expect better for you. um, but yeah, exes can definitely spring back up during this time, during this eclipse, saying, hey, I want a second chance. I didn't appreciate you. Now I'm here. All of the things that you want to hear. But again, I will say there's a lot of room for things to be walked back. Um, so just keep that in mind. They might very much come with a lot of nice words, but whether or not they actually act on it, because whenever we're dealing with Venus energy, Saturn is very much behind it as well, especially since Venus is retrograde in Aries. We are almost flipping that to like a Venus in Libra, or not, sorry, Venus in Libra, Mars in Libra, which is saying that you can't partner with everybody. You have to be very discerning about who you partner with. We can also see wake up calls surrounding health. Changes in diet or like dire changes in diet that are needed, needing certain medical treatments, something that like, especially if it has to do with like digestion or like what you're eating, and gut issues. It can also be like reevaluating your schedule and time management, releasing old routines, expectations, um, So you can see like just kind of like this less is more. Like I said, we're purging out things that don't really need to be there so that we can make a lot more room for the things that do matter. Um, Lastly, I think I had said this like a couple lunations ago, but I think with Virgo it's still relevant, is that um you have to accept that some things you just can't control. Virgo can sometimes lean into that perfectionism because it wants to control an outcome. And so therefore it wants things to be so perfect that it feels like, there's no way that it won't go the way that it thinks it'll go. And that's not always the case in life. Life is messy, no matter how much you organize it to death. And so not everything can be controlled. And so my advice and my closing, I guess my closing advice for this video is, one, again, lots of retrogrades, lots of changes, all the pieces are moving during this time. If people are trying to rush you to make a decision, and you're not ready to make a decision yet, don't feel bad about, having to think about it a bit more. Actually, I urge you to think about it a little bit more thoroughly, especially again, since it's the Ides of March that this eclipse is happening during, as well as a Venus retrograde and a Mercury retrograde. And those two are BFFs holding hands like this. Fact check all of your sources. Don't have a panic attack over some of the things that are said, especially if they're just kind of like very shocking, and they are sparking a lot of fear. Your nervous system is a big thing that you want to watch during this time. Um, yeah, so fact checking and just remembering that the small details matter, especially when it comes to taking people for granted or appreciating others. That can make a world of difference in your personal life, as well as like small changes matter, whether it's your diet or how you relate with other people. But yeah, take care of yourself. Realize that there's a lot of room for change that can happen. Um, just kind of be mindful and be open to the changes and the endings that will be coming during the full moon. Other than that, guys, I know this was a longer one, but it's a lunar eclipse. Happy eclipse season. I will be back to talk about the solar eclipse in Pisces in a couple weeks here, but I did want to go ahead and get this one out. Leave any questions you have down in the comments, and again, let me know if you like these kinds of videos, if you find them helpful at all. Share with me how this eclipse or retrograde season has been going with you for you so far. Share your goodness, excuse me, share your sun, moon, and rising. I would love to hear from you, and I hope to see you guys in private sessions very soon. I'll let you know more about that when we get closer to that date. I will talk to you guys later. Have an amazing, amazing week. I will talk to you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.